Hey, what's up, guys? Dustin Heiner here with Master Passive Income. Now, let's talk about short-term versus long-term rental properties. Short-term would be like vacation, Airbnb, VRBO type properties, and long-term would be where you rent it out for a 1-year lease, 2-year lease, or something like that. And so there are a lot of pros and a lot of cons, literally to both. I personally love having both. Now, for my portfolio, what I would like to have is 80% being long-term rental properties and 20% being VRBO, Airbnb, short-term rental properties. And the big reason why is because long-term rental properties, and we'll get into this in just a second, all the pros and cons, but it's steady income, it's reliable income, it's predictable income. Short-term rental properties is great. It's not predictable, but you make more money. Now, here's the big difference between the two, long-term versus short-term. Long-term, you actually rent it out per month on a monthly basis, but you have a year-long lease. Hopefully somebody's locked in for an entire year at a lower price. Short term is different though. You rent it out by the day. You literally rent it. Now, some people might be like a week at a time, 3 or 4 days at a time, but you're paying, or the person is paying literally a day at a time, $100, $150 a day. And so what happens is you actually make more money doing short-term rental properties as opposed to long-term rental properties because renting out per day, you make so much more money. There's a reason why hotels, there are so many hotels. There's a reason why they make so much money and they keep making money is because renting it out per day, you make more money. Let me give you an example. If you have a long-term rental property, now this long-term rental property, you're renting it out for $1,300 a month, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200, 1,500 square feet, a normal house. It might rent for $1,300. Maybe $1,500 if it's on the higher end, $1,200, $1,100 if it's on the lower end, but let's just say around $1,300. If you were to do a short-term rental property and rent it out per day, you could probably rent it out for, let's say, $90, maybe $100 a day. Now, if it's rented out every single day, now that $100 is probably on the average, maybe middle to low end. But if you rent it out every single day, that's 30 days a month on average. That's $3,000 as opposed to $1,300. So $1,300 and $3,000 is totally different in the amount of revenue that property can bring in. Now, I'm going to show you exactly how to do all this sort of stuff, investing, buying rental properties, making passive income. Get my free real estate investing course. Check the link in the description, masterpassiveincome.com/free course. That free course is literally going to show you how to do everything from finding an area of the country to invest, buying the right properties, making $250 a month, making sure that you are growing the business. I'll show you how to do that. So masterpassiveincome.com/free course. Now, with short-term rental properties, I love them as well. Now, there are pros and cons to both. Now, let's talk about the pros because there are a lot of great things about both. Now, the pros to long-term rental properties, there's a bunch of them. In fact, they're my favorite. This is how I'm able to feed my family, put a roof over our heads, travel the world, do everything we want, because with 30 plus properties making a minimum of $250 a month in passive income, that's a lot of money. And some are even making $500, $600 a month. That's fantastic. So long-term rental properties are great. Now, a big thing that I love with my long-term rental property is consistent income, like passive income consistently coming in. I can rely on it almost like a paycheck. Well, I'm not working. I literally don't work and I make money. And so what I have is actual steady income because tenants, they're always going to pay their mortgage. The tenants that live there, they're going to have schools that their kids actually go to school at. They have jobs right around. They have maybe family members really, really close. And so they don't move very often. They're not coming in and going. So I have consistent income because all the expenses minus the rents, that income is the passive income right in the middle. And let's say you have $1,000 in expenses. You rent it for $1,250, maybe $1,300. That's $300 a month in passive income. So that's why I love is consistent passive income. The next great thing, the next pro, the next good thing about long-term rental properties is very low turnover of tenants. It costs a lot of money to turn over a property. Basically, tenants moving out and then new tenants moving in. And in the middle there, you have to clean it up. You have to, fix the carpets. You have to clean them. You have to paint the walls, do a lot of stuff. Now, with a short-term rental property, you have a lot of turnover. Long-term, you have very, very little turnover. I have some tenants that are literally in there for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, paying my mortgage for me, paying my taxes for me, my property manager, paying everything, and making me money in passive income. So very, very low turnover of tenants is fantastic about long-term rental properties. Another great thing about long-term rental properties is that utilities are literally paid for by the tenants. They are put in their names. The sewer, the garbage, electricity, gas, everything is literally put in the tenant's name, not in your name, which makes it so much more, it's just better because that's one expense you don't even have to worry about. The tenant knows when they're moving in, they have to pay for those expenses. And another great thing about long-term rental properties is the security deposit. The security deposit is usually on average about equivalent to 1 month's rent. And they pay that, and that's a security for anything that goes wrong in the property. Or if they break the lease early, you get that security deposit. That's an assurance that they're going to stay in the property. Now, that security deposit is actually not your money. It's literally their money. You're just holding on to it. If they break the lease, if they ruin the property, whatever, you actually get that money. So that is another great thing. That security deposit, it's a good security blanket to cover your entire property. Another great thing about long-term rental properties is you can automate the business. I literally don't work. Now, when I say don't work, I'll take that back. I work a little bit. Let me tell you how much I work. I don't work, 4-hour work week, and that's for the birds. I don't want to work that much. I only work 30 minutes a month. Get that? A month. Not a day, not a week, 30 minutes a month, because I have the entire business automated. I have roofers, I have inspectors, I have realtors, I have wholesalers, property managers. I literally have everybody else doing the business for me, and it's absolutely automated. The only work that I do in the 30 minutes a month is literally get my property manager statement, looking at it and say, okay, everything looks good, put it aside and go back to play with my kids, going hunting or doing whatever I want. I literally just have fun. The great thing is it's absolutely automated. Now, here's the key though. And I want you to watch a video that I actually talk about the entire business process. What you want to do is the key. The pro tip I'm going to give you is you need to build the business first. Now, I have a video where I literally walk you through the entire process of building the business first. Check the link in the description for that video. That's going to help you to know if you build the business first, your property is your inventory. You have your business, and every piece of inventory is a property that you put into the business. So you can scale your business. The backwards way that a lot of people teach how to do this, they say find a property, run the numbers, make sure you're going to make money, then find somebody to fix up the property, then find somebody to rent the property, then find somebody to do a property manager. That's backwards. That's literally backwards. Don't do that. You're going to lose money. In fact, I love buying properties off of people that actually do it the wrong way, and then they get so fed up. They're like, oh my goodness, just take this property. It's such a headache. I don't want it anymore. I'm like, thank you. I'll go ahead and take that from you. So that's what you want to do, is look at this as a business. Create the business first, and you get my free real estate investing course. I will literally show you how to do that. Now let's look at the pros of short-term rental properties. The first one is huge. You make more money. I mean, just in general, you make a lot more money when you have a short-term rental property. Remember, you're renting it out per day as opposed to per month. So if you have one property that's making $100 a day versus one that's making $1,300 a month, it's a no-brainer. You're going to make, what, $1,700 more. Now, that's a huge, huge bonus, because when you're having one property that's actually making you like $700 or $1,000 more than you normally would, that's a huge, huge increase in the amount of passive income that you have that can help you propel into financial freedom much faster. So short-term rental properties definitely make you a lot more money. The next benefit of having a short-term rental property is your tenants pay for all the expenses like soap and shampoo. You just make sure that's accounted for inside of your expenses. You make sure that's accounted for when you're charging the rent. So your utilities, all that sort of stuff. Now, I know in long-term rental properties, they put it in their name, where the utilities is inside the tenant's name, electricity, all that stuff is in the tenant's name. But when you have a short-term rental property, what's going to happen is it's in your name, but even though it's in your name, you absolutely have the tenants pay for all those expenses, electricity and all that stuff. You just bake that into the cost of the renting of the day, especially even cleaning fees. You can have your cleaning fee be basically cover the entire cost of cleaning the entire house. So Airbnb is great because all your expenses are covered. Now, the next great thing about short-term rental properties is that Airbnb has insurance, like its own insurance. Now, I've heard some little bit of downside that it possibly may not work out well if some circumstance of this, that, or the other. I don't know exactly how it will work out, but sometimes it might not get paid. But Airbnb has its own insurance over every single property so that you're covered by Airbnb. On top of that, you have your own insurance, so making sure that the property is taken care of. But that's a huge comfort that they have the insurance over it. But at the same time, another bonus or another great thing about it is you can screen out tenants. by seeing what they've done in the past. Seeing, okay, they stayed here, here, and here, and there were bad reviews. Maybe I'm not going to let them stay in my property. So you can see what type of tenants are coming in. Now, you're not going to do a background check. That's definitely not what you're going to be able to do on a short term. But you can see the reviews that the other homeowners, the other Airbnb hosts can actually put on for each one of the short-term tenants. And if they're bad, then don't put them in the property. So that's another great thing about short-term rental properties. Now, since we were just talking about short-term rental properties, let's jump into the cons or the negatives about short-term rental properties. The first one is you're absolutely dependent like a stranglehold over you on other platforms like short-term rental properties, Airbnb and vrbo, those two different websites that are probably the most predominantly used websites, but you're under a stranglehold under them. If they literally kick you off, then you're done. Or if you get bad reviews, like you get 2 or 3 bad reviews, then nobody's going to want to stay there. So you're absolutely dependent on the Airbnb or vrbo, that platform. Just like if you had a Facebook and somebody closes your Facebook account or Facebook closes your Facebook account, you literally don't have that account anymore. You can't talk to your people. Same thing with Airbnb. If they delist your property, you cannot have it as an Airbnb anymore. And another bad thing about Airbnbs are the customer reviews. You have no say over the customer review. You might be able to, appeal it and say, hey, this didn't really happen, and see if Airbnb will change it. But if you get one bad review and then a second bad review, and you have a bunch of good ones, but you have a few bad reviews, that's going to make it harder to rent your property. You're going to have to lower your prices because it's not a top-notch quality property. So customer reviews are very, very big, especially if you get jerks. And so if you've ever looked at any reviews on any products on Amazon, it's either a 5-star or a 1-star. Like there's very few stars in the middle. It's either 5 or 1. Same thing with Airbnb. You're going to get a lot less people that are going to be like, oh, it was a 3. No, they might just move it to a 1 and say, no, this was a horrible place. Never stay there. That's really, really going to hurt. Another bad thing about short-term rental properties, Airbnb, VRBOs, are the slow periods. There are times of the year that you will not have it rented. Some maybe months or something like that. Like in Phoenix, it's absolutely hot in July and August. It's going to be harder to get that rented. Now in the wintertime, it's beautiful. You have people coming in from all over to stay here. You're going to have a lot more people staying in the better months. Now what's going to happen is the slow periods will be hopefully made up for by the good periods, the times where it's literally rented every single day. And what you want to do is you want to mitigate that slow period, the loss of finances, loss of revenue, by not overspending. Like, you have income coming in from December, if it's in, Phoenix, and you have income coming for December. Well, in July, you're going to have a problem, lower income, you save money for them. But that's a downside. Now, a big one we just saw in 2020, we had COVID-19. COVID-19, literally 2 months. 2 months of no income coming in because nobody's traveling. Nobody is going to be renting out your place. Airbnb is giving out refunds left and right, all that sort of stuff. That's really bad. My rental properties that are long-term rental properties did fantastic. I literally, they can't go anywhere. They're locked in their house by the stupid government. And so they're locked in. They have to pay the rent. So long-term rental properties are much better in that regard. So you have to watch out for slow periods in short-term rental properties. Another downside is constant turnover for the short-term properties because they're only rented out by the day. Sometimes might be 4 or 5 days at a time, maybe a week, 2 weeks, something like that. But it could be 2 or 3 days. So it's constant turnover, constant wear and tear on the property. Baggages and luggage coming in and out, food and kids jumping on beds and all that sort of stuff. You need to account for all these expenses. Like if you have beds, which in short-term rental properties, you will have beds. Those beds, you need to change the sheets, not just wash them, but literally change them when they're all ugly and bad. And you don't want hair around. Like it's just, with having a short-term rental property, you want to make sure that it's top-notch. You want to make sure that's very, very good quality, and making sure that with the turnover of tenants, you have to clean it really well. You have to make sure that everything's stocked. So that's a big thing, is a lot of wear and tear on the property and a lot of people coming through your property. Another downside about short-term rental properties is the utilities are in your name. Like in Phoenix, I live in Phoenix, so that's why I keep bringing up Phoenix. In the summertime, it's so hot. And so people would literally crank down the air conditioning to let's say 68 degrees. And the AC would literally be on all day, every day. Well, you can't account for that. That's just something that some people might want it colder. Some people might want it hotter. It just depends on the person. But they're in your name, so you're actually going to be on the hook for all of these expenses. Sewer, garbage, water. Like let's say somebody left the water on and it just keeps running. you're going to pay for that. So all the utilities are in your name and they're stuck with you. Another downside is when you buy the house, of course, usually you buy a house, it's completely empty, no furniture or anything like that. But when you buy a house, you need to furnish the entire house. You need to make it look pretty with good pictures and, nice things all over the place. Put TVs in there, get internet, get telephone. I think most people just have cell phones, but you need to make sure you have all these amenities, beds, pillows, all that sort of stuff, shampoo. You need to make sure it's furnished. Even coffee, those are type of things those are expenses you need to account for. Now, when you're making twice or three times as much as you would from a long-term rental property, it's probably really, really good. I know a lady that I actually literally just talked to. She said that she makes 3 times what she would in a month from if it were a long-term rental property. That goes very, very long way. But that's another con you have to be watching out for. Furnishing an entire house is a lot of money. It could be $5,000 to $10,000 for just furnishing of that entire house. Another big downside for me for short-term rental properties is it's really, really hard to automate the business very well. Now, you absolutely can. There's a lot more companies now after the last, 4 or 5 years of Airbnb really taking off, that there are a lot of property managers that would actually be good short-term rental property managers. But it's really hard to find good ones that make sure the property is taken care of very well. I mean, just the fact of not having hair left like on a bed, like that would turn off a customer, somebody that's moving in for literally 2 days, they see hair on the bed, like, oh man, this wasn't washed. That's really, really bad. And so when you're automating the business, you need to make sure you have really, really good quality people working in the property, making sure it's top notch every single time. With a long-term property, I literally make sure it's perfect right when the person moves in, and then I don't have to worry about it ever again until they move out. Now, that was a lot of downsides about short-term rental properties, but what about long-term? There are plenty of downsides with long-term rental properties, so let's jump into them. The first one is there are evictions. Evictions are a bummer when somebody can't pay the rent. Let's say somebody lost their job and they can't make any money, so they can't pay the rent. It's a huge bummer going through an eviction because it costs a lot of money. Lawyers get involved and all that sort of stuff. It's not fun, but it's a part of doing business. So evictions are a part of life. Another downside is wear and tear on the property. Now, if you actually go to court because a tenant is saying, hey, this landlord has a bad property, they're not taking care of it, what the judge will probably even say is normal wear and tear on a property, the landlord has to pay for normal wear and tear. Let's say tenant's been there for 4 years, the carpet's getting really, really worn because maybe you didn't put in the best carpet or something like that, whatever it might be. It's just getting really, really worn and there needs painting on the walls and stuff like that. They're going to say, the judge is going to say, well, on a normal house, if you live there, every 5 years you might paint it. Every 7, 8 years you might change the carpet, whatever it might be. Those are expenses you have to pay for. And if somebody's been living in there for 5 to 10 years, they could potentially take you to court and say, you're not changing the carpet. It really needs to be changed. Judge says, well, yeah, it probably does. So here's pictures. Let's go ahead and do it. So that's a potential. I've never actually had that, but that's just something to keep in mind. Another downside is making sure that you have the right tenants in the property, ones that have good background checks, one that actually don't have criminal history or are literally been evicted 4 times. In fact, I have one quick story. I had one potential tenant say, I want to rent your property, talking to the property manager. And they did a background check, and on everything on the application before the background check, they look fantastic. They look really, really good. Good record of renting out places, good credit history, good employment history. Then I did the background check. And in the last 3 years, they were evicted 4 times. 4 times in 3 years. Can you believe that? And I realized, oh my goodness, I am not going to be the 5th time in the 3 years. So I did not let that person move in. So you need to have a higher gauge of who's going into your property. You don't have reviews like Airbnb or vrbo, like, hey, this person is actually a really good tenant. You don't have that. You have to go off a background check, go off your feel, the property manager's feel, if it's a good fit for the property, if they're going to take care of the property. So there's a lot of things that you need to actually account for in each one of these tenants. Now, I've given you so many great things about short-term rental properties and downsides about them, as well as long-term rental properties. But when you weigh everything out, the money that you make for short-term rental property is fantastic. That's why I like to say, if you're going to have a portfolio, for me, suggestion for me, 80% being long-term because we count on that income, 20% being short-term rental properties because you make more money, but you don't want to have all your eggs in the short-term basket because if COVID happens for an entire year, then you don't have any money coming in. Then you get evicted from your own house, or you get, your mortgage gets taken from you. And so no matter what you do with short-term or long-term properties, just get started investing. Get my free real estate investing course. And if you got anything out there, I would love it if you liked this video. I know that it helps YouTube. Get this out to more people. But you're awesome. I'll see you guys in the next one.